What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm here to break down the NFL wide receivers for Week 1 on the Sunday main slate for Draftkings. Really excited for NFL to be back. I've already recorded a quarterback videos and a running back videos and Thursday Night Football video if you're watching this before then. So be sure to go check that out as well. If you're new to this channel, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment, turn on the notification bell. All those things really help me grow. We've had a ton of growth throughout NASCAR and NBA season, and now NFL's here, and I want to continue to grow even more, as we already have so far to the first few videos, so that's great. So new subscribers, thanks for being here. If you want to get more of my content, you can subscribe to my Patreon. I'll put the link in the description below. It's for only $10 a month. You're going to get an article every single week, you're going to get an article for every single position for the main slates, where I just kind of go more in depth with the matchups, along with just some notes I write on everything too. And then you're also going to get an article for all three main showdown slates every week, like Thursday, Monday, Sunday Night Football. You're also going to get all my injury notes, my top stack rankings, my cash rankings, and my top matchup rankings. I don't know if I said that, but yeah, all of those. So be sure to check all of that out. I'll put the link in the description below for that. It's only $10 a month. If you want to follow me on social media, Twitter's at DFSNateLane, Instagram's at Natelane_. I'll also put that below as well. So be sure to check out all that stuff. And yeah, I think that's it. Let's get into the receivers. All right, so for wide receivers, there's a lot of things that go into it, but I like to go a little bit more in depth with the receivers because I think the receivers are the most important, probably the most important, hardest to predict, and the most deep you can get into each position out of all the positions to decide on good plays. I don't think it's just a lot of people look at overall defenses versus position for receivers, or they'll look at maybe just the individual cornerback match for the receivers, but it's way more than that. So when I get to go over or the lines if they're not favored, that's definitely important, which I'll definitely talk about. But another thing that's really important is the quarterback play and the offensive line versus defensive line, because I'm just kind of scrolling through showing you everything on the spreadsheet. So if you have a receiver who, they have a great matchup against a corner, like let's say, for example, this week, who has a great matchup? We'll say, since we're starting out with the Bills, Stephon Diggs has a great matchup this week against Pierre Desir on the Jets. It's a bad corner. But let's just say, for example, that the New York Jets defensive line consists of Aaron Donald and Khalil Mack, and they're the best pass rushing duo in the league. That may not matter that Stephon Diggs is going up against Pierre Desir for this game, because he is going now Josh Allen has no time to throw the ball. He's getting absolutely destroyed, and there's just not as many accurate throws from Josh Allen to Stephon Diggs. So that stuff like that's really important. And that's kind of stuff I'm not really going to talk about that as much. I'll talk about it a little bit in the video, but that's kind of stuff that I kind of go more in depth. That's more important on the Patreon. So be sure to check that out. But yeah, so let's get started. So we got the Buffalo Bills going against New York Jets, which it says opponents Bills, but it's supposed to say opponents Jets. Whatever. They're playing against the New York Jets. Cole Beasley's in the slot, John Brown's number 2, and Stephon Diggs outside number 1. So the three starting cornerbacks for the New York Jets are Pierre Desir, Blessuan Austin, and Brian Poole. Brian Poole's in the slot against Cole Beasley. Brian Poole is actually a pretty solid cornerback, so that matchup for Cole Beasley is really not individually that great. But then John Brown against Blessuan Austin is actually it's not great. He was not a starter last year, but when he played was pretty solid. But the one that really is a good matchup is Stephon Diggs against Pierre Desir. I mean, Pierre Desir graded out terribly last year, and Stephon Diggs is obviously a very good receiver, as you all know. I'm sure everyone knows who Stephon Diggs is, and we know Josh Allen loves throwing a deep ball. If he could just become a little bit more accurate at it this year, that's going to be a great matchup, individual matchup for Stephon Diggs. When we look at the safeties, those two starting safeties for the Jets are Bradley McDougald and Marcus May. Bradley McDougald, acquired in the Jamal Adams trade, is a pretty solid corner or safety, but I mean, it's just not the same. So overall, when we look at the quarterback versus the all the defensive backs, Josh Allen has a negative matchup, so that's really not great for all the defensive backs. But Stephon Diggs' individual matchup with Pierre Desir looks really, really good. And he might get some Blessuan Austin on him too, but I would expect more Pierre Desir. So I do like Stephon Diggs as in a matchup standpoint. When we go to the offenses versus defensive line, it is a positive matchup, it's a positive matchup for the Buffalo Bills over that Jets defensive line. So I do like that a little bit. All right. So But and then what I also do for my average for the individual matchups completely. It's not just the cornerback versus the receiver. That's including the offensive line. That's including the quarterback. That's including the safeties. It's including everything that I think is important for the receivers. And only one of those guys that grades out pretty nicely is Stephon Diggs. John Brown does a little bit too. John Brown is a deep threat, someone who I'd want to maybe throw up in tournaments. But for this is a game where it's the lowest total game on the slate, and Buffalo's favored by about 7 points. So I don't think this is a game where I really want to go to these guys as much. I mean, yeah, we could have one just deep bomb to John Brown or to Stephon Diggs, but this isn't a game I think I'm too interested in stacking. I was at the beginning of the week, but not as much anymore. But I think just taking shots on John Brown or Stephon Diggs in tournaments is a good option, but that's really about it for me. That's all I really want to get out of this game, just because I don't think there's going to be a lot of scoring no matter what, and I think they might be running the ball more. So I'm really interested to see the Bills play with Diggs, though. I think it's just interesting football to watch, so I'm excited for that. Up next, we'll go to the Miami Dolphins, where they face off against probably, one of the best defenses in the league in New England. We got Devontae Parker and Preston Williams are pretty much the two main guys. They're going to be getting guarded by Stephon Gilmore and J.C. Jackson. Two very, very good corners. They both grade out negatively against those corners. So it's just maybe not the place to go. And then we have Ryan Fitzpatrick in against the safeties with Devin McCourty and Adrian Phillips, who are two very, very solid safeties. So that's not going to grade out too well. A negative matchup there overall for Ryan Fitzpatrick. And then we go to the offensive line versus the defensive line. That is also going to be a negative matchup for the defensive or offensive line of Miami. So I have negative matchup grades for Devontae Parker and Preston Williams this week. I just don't think this is the spot they go off. And now I know everyone's going to say, oh, Devontae Parker cooked Stephon Gilmore week 17 last year. That's literally the only game Stephon Gilmore got beat all year long. I mean, he got beaten one play by John Brown, and in that game, that's it. He was absolute lockdown all year last year. And I just don't think that's going to come back. I think Stephon Gilmore is mad about all the stuff that Parker's been talking all year. He's going to come and shut him down. That's just my thoughts on it. They are going to be playing from behind, so that's one thing to help. I just hate the matchup. I just don't really want to go there. Maybe I'll have a little bit of shares of Preston Williams because I think his matchup's a little bit better with J.C. Jackson, but that's about it for me. Up next, we're going to go to New England Patriots, where we have Damiere Byrd at only $3,200, who's a starting receiver now, but I don't think he's going to get a lot of targets. Julian Edelman and N'Keal Harry. So N'Keal Harry probably aligns the best at wide receiver 1, Damiere Byrd wide receiver 2, and then Julian Edelman in the slot. So we're probably going to see N'Keal Harry going up against Byron Jones for most of the day, Damiere Byrd going up against Xavier Howard for most of the day, and Julian Edelman going up against rookie Noah, the guy he's from Auburn. I don't know how to say his last name. So when we go look at the wide receiver grades, Julian Edelman and N'Keal Harry grade out as positive matchups where Damiere Byrd does not. Eric Rowe and Bobby McCain make up the safety groups, and Cam Newton going up against them grades out negatively, but Cam Newton's grades are from the 2 games from last year. He didn't grade out so well, so that's not going to look as great, but still, I mean, I think that for me, so Cam Newton in Carolina. Cam Newton's favorite targets every year in Carolina is just going back to the years. We had Kelvin Benjamin. He loved Kelvin Benjamin. He loved Devin Funchess. Always loved Greg Olsen. Those were really his main guys that he really liked getting the ball to. I feel like there's another big receiver I'm leaving out there, but those were the main guys. And that's what Cam Newton likes to throw to. And N'Keal Harry is just a big wide receiver. So I think N'Keal Harry ends up being a big beneficiary of having Cam Newton in this offense this year. And when we have his individual matchup that grades out pretty nicely against Xavier Howard, who, I mean, is good, but he had a rough year last year in the games he played, but he also was in Miami. When we go look at the offensive line versus defensive line, we're going to go see that it is a very, very positive line for New England Patriots. I mean, they just look really, really solid there. New England's favored in this game by a good bit, so that is one problem where I feel like they're going to run the ball, but I think I'm okay with it. So I'm interested in Julian Edelman and N'Keal Harry here. I don't think Damiere Byrd is going to torch Xavier Howard at all, really, for a deep threat. I mean, he could, but Cam Newton's really never been an elite deep thrower. I think I'm definitely looking more at Julian Edelman and N'Keal Harry here. Preferably being N'Keal Harry. I think he's my favorite player on this team. They are playing from ahead, so it's not like a line where they're going to be playing from behind and throwing the ball a lot. Not going to be a shootout game, but I think N'Keal Harry's fine to take some shots on in tournaments. So is Edelman, but again, none for cash or anything. Up next, we have the New York Jets playing against Buffalo Bills. We have Jamison Crowder in the slot, Denzel Mims outside number 2, and Brashad Perryman outside number 1. Mims is questionable. I think he might actually miss this game. We'll have to wait and see on that one. But immediately I'm just going to throw out Rashad Perryman here because he's going to be guarded by Tre'Davious White, who should pretty much shut him down. I mean, Perryman, he's okay, but he's not a good number one receiver. Then we're going to have Denzel Mims, or whoever's playing the other receiver, too, on the outside against Levi Wallace. But then the one I do like is Jamison Crowder in the slot against Teron Johnson. He grades out pretty nicely in the offense versus defense. The problem here is the safeties are Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde. Sam Darnold is not going to grade out very well against them. It's a negative matchup for Sam Darnold against the entire secondary. For Buffalo, I mean, Buffalo's secondary is by far their strongest part of their defense. It's elite. It's just that group, those main three, and then Levi Wallace is solid too. It's just elite. So, Jamison Crowder is the one guy I think I am interested in on this team. When we go look at the offensive line versus defensive line, it does grade out positively for the Jets. I mean, like I said, I said this in, I think it was the QB videos, or maybe it was, I don't know, one of the videos, running back or quarterback videos. The Bills' defense line really isn't as good as everyone thinks it is. It's good, but it isn't that good. Denzel Mims grades out as a negative matchup for me. Jamison Crowder grades out and Rashad Perryman grades out slightly positive ones, but this I'm just not really interested too much in all of them. The one I'm interested in most in is Jamison Crowder. They're going to be playing from behind. It's the lowest total game on the slate, but they will be playing from behind, and we know that Sam Darnold loves throwing targets to the slot and up the seam routes, up the middle, so that's where Jamison Crowder plays. So he's definitely someone that's got my eye. I definitely think that he's someone who could begin like 10 targets this game. I think him and Chris Herndon are going to have a huge part in this offense this year. Herndon's a tight end, so we'll talk about him in the tight end videos. But they're going to be playing from behind, so he'll probably get the ball some more. So I think Crowder's interesting, someone I would play in some GPPs. And like he's not that expensive. He's only in the 5Ks, right? Jamison Crowder, 5,200. So I think that's someone who's a solid option to play. But I don't want to go to Perryman or Mims at all. The Bills' defense also historically, the past few years, has been a defense that doesn't allow like deep plays. They just allow the short intermediates. That's how they stop stuff, and that's all Jamison Crowder does. He's just running slants, running the slot routes, and getting the short plays. So in PPR Draftkings, it's just very solid look at there. Next, we have the Baltimore Ravens going up against Cleveland, where the two starting receivers that I'm interested in are Miles Boykin and Marquise Brown. On the two outsides, we have Marquise Brown's going to match up against Denzel Ward, and Miles Boykin up against Greedy Williams. They could switch off and on a little bit here and there, but neither of these guys are playing out slot. That's Willie Snead, but he's not going to get that much targets. That's going to tight ends in Baltimore. We all know that. I don't like Marquise Brown's price that much. I was hoping he'd be a little bit cheaper. He's just not. He's got upside, but I don't like his matchup either. Like Denzel Ward's a very, very good corner that just doesn't get a lot of credit at all. He's definitely someone who's on the rise as a shutdown corner in this league, and I think this probably should. I think last year was supposed to be the year that he finally broke out, but he got injured. So I think this is the year he probably does break out completely and be a shutdown corner. So I don't think Marquise Brown really torches him all that much. Regardless of it, though, we do see Marquise Brown ends up grading out with a positive matchup where Boykin does not. When it comes to the safeties versus Lamar Jackson, starting safeties for Cleveland are Carl Joseph and Ronnie Harrison. That does grade out as a very positive matchup for Lamar Jackson versus the secondary of the Cleveland Browns. When we go look at the offensive line versus the defensive line, we see a slightly negative matchup for the offensive line against the pass rush. That's just how it's been. I mean, that defensive line in Cleveland's pretty good. They're a very good run blocking offensive line, but pass blocking maybe not as much. But we know they're not going to pass as much either, and it's not like Marquise Brown's probably the number one targeted guy in his team. It's going to still be Mark Andrews. But Marquise Brown does grade out as a solid option. He grades out as a solid matchup. I think he's a good play to maybe just throw in some tournaments. I wouldn't really play him in cash because he's not going to have a ton of volume, not going to get a ton of targets, but he is going to get some upside, has some deep threat ability, and has a chance to really pop off this week. I mean, he's just not my favorite. I know Denzel Ward doesn't grade out that well, but I've been a huge Denzel Ward supporter for a while. I think this is probably finally the year he just breaks out. So I'm still just going to maybe slightly avoid that. Up next, we have the Cincinnati Bengals against the LA Chargers. We got Tyler Boyd in the slot, AJ Green, and then T. Higgins on the outside. AJ Green, see this secondary is tough. AJ Green going to get guarded by Casey Hayward, one of the most underrated and best corners of the last 8 years. Then you have T. Higgins, a rookie, going against Chris Harris Jr., going up against another corner who's been absolutely fantastic. And then Desmond King in the slot going against Tyler Boyd. Just all tough matchups. And none of them are cheap. T. Higgins is 4,400. That's okay, but he's probably going to be the third third most targeted receiver. Boyd and Green will be 1 and 2. So they both grade out. Well, Tyler Boyd grades out negatively, and then Derwin James isn't starting anymore, but Nasir Adderley is, and Joe Burrow is a rookie, so I don't have any grades on him at all. But this is just a tough secondary to have to go up against. When we go look at the offensive line versus defensive line, it's a very negative matchup for the defensive line or for the offensive line of Cincinnati, and then just overall, it's just a completely negative matchup for all of the receivers, all three of Boyd, Green, and Higgins. So probably not anywhere I want to go to. They're going to be playing from behind, so that does give something. The line shows that they will be playing from behind. Maybe get some exposure to a little bit of them in tournaments. The ones I'd probably want to go to are Boyd, and then I don't think A.J. Green, probably Tyler T. Higgins. I think those are the two that I may want to get some exposure to in GPPs, but none of them in cash. Next, we have the Baltimore Ravens, where we have Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry. And Odell Beckham Jr., it's going to surprise people. It's $5,900, and I think that's going to make him kind of popular, but I hate his matchup. I really do. I mean, he's going to have to go up against Marcus Peters, and then we have Jarvis Landry, who's going to be going up against Marlon Humphrey in the slot. Marlon Humphrey, I think, is a better corner, but he just guards players like Landry more than he would Odell, so that's why I think he'll be on. More or less, but both of them are really good cover receivers. They both have negative. Odell and Landry. Actually, Landry does have a slightly positive matchup against Marlon Humphrey, but Odell's is negative. And then we have Chuck Clark and Deshaun Elliott in the secondary. Baker Mayfield grades out negatively against the entire secondary because it's just a very good secondary. When we go look at offensive line versus defensive line, that one does grade out positively for Cleveland. Their offensive line grades out pretty nicely against the Baltimore Ravens pass rush. So that is a nice little thing there, but Odell grades out as a slightly negative option, but I think he's still someone I want in GPPs as Landry grades out as a positive one. I want him in GPPs because these are the type of guys that, especially Odell. I don't know how much I really want Landry because his ceiling feels a little bit limited, but Odell Beckham definitely because he has such a high ceiling. It's Odell. We all know what he can do. And 48.5 total is one of the highest totals on this game, on the slate. They're going to be playing from behind. I don't think the matchup's as good as everyone thinks it is. We've seen Marcus Peters have great years. We've seen him have bad years. So Odell Beckham, if Peters decides this year he's going to have a bad year, then yeah, Odell could be a very, very good very good matchup for him and be in for a good game. And just the fact that they're going to be playing from behind and having to throw the ball a lot more makes me like Odell just a little bit more. So I think I do want to get to some Odell on this slate, just in tournaments, not in cash or anything though. Up next, we have Paris Campbell and T.Y. Hilton for the Indianapolis Colts, and Paris Campbell is looking like a pretty solid cheap value here. He's going to be playing in the slot against DJ Hayden, who's just garbage. He's just not a good corner. And then T.Y. Hilton's going to be on the outside against Trey Herndon. So let's see here. I'm sorry, I had that wrong. T.Y. Hilton's the one I want, and Paris Campbell's the one that I don't want as much. Trey Herndon is not a good corner. He's going to get torched by T.Y. Hilton. He's just grades out terribly. And then DJ Hayden has actually graded out pretty solid in the slot over the last few years. So T.Y. Hilton has a very, very positive matchup, and Paris Campbell has a very, very negative matchup versus their corners. When we go look at the safeties, it's Jared Wilson and Andrew Wingard, and Phillip Rivers is their new quarterback. So we've seen, I think T.Y. Hilton, we've seen Rivers can just air the ball out sometimes, and if he can just be a little bit more consistent, he's got T.Y. Hilton to throw it deep to instead of Mike Williams now, and I think T.Y. Hilton could be a solid option in that spot. When we go look at the offensive line versus the defensive line, it comes out to a very positive grade for the Indianapolis Colts. We know they have one of the best offensive lines in the league, and Jacksonville Jaguars defensive line sucks, so T.Y. Hilton matchup-wise grades out very well, and Paris Campbell grades out positively, just not great, so I think I'll have a little bit of Paris Campbell. He's a lot of fantasy football people this year are calling Paris Campbell a breakout guy this year. I don't know about that, but he's still a solid player. The only thing I would worry about the Colts a little bit is this is a negative game script for them. They are going to be playing from ahead more than likely. They're going to be running the ball a lot, and we know the Colts like to run the ball anyway, so that one worries me a little bit. Probably not neither of these guys I'm going to have too much exposure to, but I'll definitely get some T.Y. Hilton in some lineups and maybe a little bit Paris Campbell just because I know the matchup's so soft. Up next, we have DJ Chark, Chris Conley, D.D. Westbrook for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm very interested in these guys, actually, especially whoever's going to be guarded by Xavier Rhodes. So we got Rocky Sin, Xavier Rhodes, Kenny Moore II in the slot. So Right now, I have Xavier Rhodes as the number 2 corner because rational coaching would make Xavier Rhodes the number 2 corner because that dude's dust. He's not good. Rocky Sin would be the starter, but I don't know what's going to happen. If they put Xavier Rhodes on DJ Chark, this guy's going to have a 200-yard game. He's just going to destroy him. Xavier Rhodes was absolute garbage last year. I don't know how in the world he made it into the Pro Bowl. He was terrible. And if we're going to get him going up against DJ Chark, oh my gosh. And even if he's going up against Chris Conley, I like that. Chris Conley won't get, as many passes, obviously, or as much volume, but he's going to be in a good spot. And, the Jaguars are going to get probably beat pretty bad this game. They're going to be playing from behind. So that grades out really well for DJ Chark. You get a wide receiver in a good one-on-one matchup, and even if it is Rocky Sin, that is still a very good one-on-one matchup. Someone who's going to be playing from behind, who's going to be able to get the ball a lot, and he's got a great matchup. Sign me up all day for that. So yeah, I'm definitely interested in some DJ Chark here. Definitely someone I want to get some exposure to. Then we have Kerry Willis and Malik Hooker in the safeties. Gardner Minshew is starting quarterback. He grades out positively against the entire secondary because Colts, that's their biggest issue on offense. Is definitely the secondary, or on defense, is definitely the secondary. Great front seven, back four are a little bit questionable. So, I think DJ Chark's definitely in play as we go look at overall. After offensive and defensive line, he grades out as a nice positive matchup, one of the better ones on the entire slate, honestly. Chris Conley and D.D. Westbrook do as well. I think Chris Conley is someone you can throw in tournaments just because he's going to be low-owned, and he's got the upside, especially if you get Xavier Rhodes on him. So definitely want some of all these guys. Maybe not D.D. Westbrook as much. I don't think the ceiling is that high, but they all look like solid options. And I even think DJ Chark's a fine play in cash. I don't hate that play. I don't hate that go-to play in cash. I don't think I mentioned either. Odell Beckham as well is someone that I'm interested for cash for sure. All right, here comes my favorite teams to play the receivers on. I almost said Oakland, Las Vegas Raiders. Oh my goodness. So, Tyrell Williams out for season. So, Bryan Edwards, Hunter Renfrow, Henry Ruggs, starting 3 receivers. Renfrow's in the slot, so you have Edwards and Henry Ruggs on the outside. So, the defensive backs in Carolina sucked last year anyway, but James Bradbury went to the Giants. So, and they got Eli Apple. So, Dante Jackson and Eli Apple were supposed to be the 1 and 2 corners. But wait, it gets even better. Eli Apple's on the IR now. So, Dante Jackson, who was, terrible last year, he's so bad. 56.3 PFF coverage rating last year. Horrible. And Troy Pride Jr., a rookie, are starting corners. Dante Jackson's going to be the number 1 corner. I'm assuming Henry Ruggs is going to be the number 1 receiver for this team, but it could be Edwards, but it's going to be Ruggs. He was, first-round draft pick. Henry Ruggs has just an elite matchup. I want to get to Henry Ruggs as much as I can this week. This game I want to stack so bad because both these defenses suck. Both these secondaries suck. All these guys grade out well. Let's just go look at Derek Carr against that secondary, which isn't even up, so never mind. But it's a good grading here. So you have Derek Carr, who's just in an absolute amazing spot. Look at how they grade out. Hunter Renfrow, Bryan Edwards, Henry Ruggs, all grade fantastically. The only reason Renfrow grades out better is because he actually has a PFF grade from last year, where these guys don't. So matchup-wise, these guys are just fantastic. I just want to go after all these guys so much. I'll play them in cash. I'll play them in tournaments. I don't care. Edwards and Ruggs probably the main 2, but Renfrow's solid too. But yeah, Henry Ruggs, Hunter Renfrow, I just want all day. Or Henry Ruggs, Bryan Edwards, I just want all day. I want stacks of that. So yeah, I'm excited for that. Up next, we got Keenan Allen against LA Chargers. Against the Cincinnati Bengals. Plays for the LA Chargers. $6,400 on DraftKings. He's going to be going up against William Jackson. He's kind of the only receiver there. Mike Williams is out. It's Jason Moore and some other guy who's just not good, who aren't going to get a lot of targets or anything. So I'm not really interested in those guys. But Keenan Allen's going to go up against William Jackson, who's a good corner, but has had a rough year in the past year. So the matchup doesn't look fantastic. Tyrod Taylor grades out positively against the entire secondary. When we go look at offensive line versus defensive line, it's bad. It's a negative grade, but overall, Keenan Allen does grade out positively. I think he's just a solid option. He's going to get the ball a lot. I don't hate it. I think he's definitely someone you could go to. We saw last year at the beginning of the year, when Gordon was out, Keenan Allen was just getting peppered with targets every single week. I think Mike Williams was out too, or maybe it was Hunter Henry. One of Hunter Henry or Mike Williams is out, so Keenan Allen's just going to get the ball a ton. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that happen again. They are going to be playing from ahead, though. Won't be playing from behind, but I think this game might be a little closer than people think it's going to be. So I do not hate going to Keenan Allen. Up next, we're going to go to Philly, where we got J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, Deshaun Jackson, and Greg Ward. So Deshaun Jackson, week 1 Deshaun Jackson has been elite the last few years, and he's always been elite against his former teams. Redskins are his former team, and he's the number 1 receiver because there's no Jalen Reagor, and there's no, what's his name? Alshon Jeffrey is just bad anyway. So Fabian Moreau is going to be the starting corner going up against Deshaun Jackson in this game. So I think he's just someone who's going to get the ball a ton this game. I mean, because who else are they going to throw it to? I mean, I guess Ertz and Goddard, but still, just the matchup looks elite. Carson Wentz versus the entire secondary, one of the best matchups overall on the slate. When we go look at offensive line versus defensive line, it's the best matchup on the slate. So Deshaun Jackson grades out as my best matchup receiver on the entire slate. And Greg Ward, I think, might be second. And Henry Ruggs is pretty close. Or not Henry Ruggs. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside is up there. So all these guys grade out very, very well for me. I love Deshaun Jackson this week. He's a tournament guy, probably not a GPP guy. Because who knows how much targets he's going to get. I mean, I honestly wouldn't be that shocked if Ertz and Goddard were number 1 and 2 on the target list. But J.J. Arcega-Whiteside and Greg Ward both should get some targets as number 2 and 3 receivers. I think they're solid options. Take maybe some stabs on GPPs. Philly is supposed to be playing ahead in this game. The game script does not look to go their way, but I just think that defense is so bad. Like, they could just put up all the numbers in the first half or the first 3 quarters, and it won't even matter. So Deshaun Jackson, definitely someone I'm interested in. Just interested in the whole Philly offense this week. So, yeah, I'm pretty excited about that one. Up next, we have Terry McLaurin, Steven Sims for the Washington football team. Steven Sims is $4,700 playing in the slot. Terry McLaurin, $5,600 on the outside going against Darius Slay, who I don't think is as good as everyone that says he is. Personally, last year did not have a very good year. I just don't understand what everyone's like, oh, Darius Slay is all of a sudden going to be back to the shutdown corner. Like, no, I mean, he's getting older. He's not super young anymore. He just got paid a ton. He doesn't have any incentives to just play out of his mind anymore. They don't necessarily need to, he doesn't necessarily need to just dominate this year. And Terry McLaurin is an up-and-coming receiver, and I think people are going to be scared of this Darius Slay matchup, but I want to get all of that. I think this is a place where they're going to be playing from behind. I don't think Darius Slay is as good. Terry McLaurin is pretty much the only guy. I mean, yes, Steven Sims and Dontrell Inman are there, but how many targets are they really getting? It's mostly McLaurin, so I think Terry McLaurin should have probably about 10 to 12 targets this game. And if he gets that, is going to be in for a really, really solid spot. Steven Sims is going in a really tough one-on-one matchup against Nickel Roby-Coleman, so I don't really want to go after him. I don't think he's going to get targeted that well. It's not like the matchup's great. He's a very good slot corner. When we go look at Dwayne Haskins versus the overall secondary, yeah, it's a negative matchup. Everything from here on out is going to be a negative matchup. The line's negative, but McLaurin still finds a way to grade out positively. So I do like Terry McLaurin. I like the game script. I think this is a spot where he excels at, and I don't think he's going to get too much ownership, and he's pretty reasonably priced. Up next for the Chicago Bears, we have Allen Robinson and Anthony Miller. Anthony Miller in the slot. Allen Robinson outside against rookie Jeff Okudah. Anthony Miller in the slot against Justin Coleman. So this one's interesting for me for Allen Robinson because I usually like targeting rookie corners, but Jeff Okudah is the best rookie corner in a long time. So he is actually someone that I feel might be a good corner from day one. That guy is just insane. One of the best prospects I've ever seen at that position, and at least in a long time. So Allen Robinson, I think, might be in for a somewhat tough game. Anthony Miller in the slot against Justin Coleman does have a pretty solid matchup. Both these guys grade out positively in their 1v1s. Mitchell Trubisky is the starting quarterback, though. That's not going to grade out well. It's going to grade out negatively against that Detroit secondary, which is solid. When we go to offensive line versus defensive line, we have a positive matchup for Allen Robinson and negative matchup on both sides. But at the end of this, Allen Robinson does end up with a positive matchup, and Anthony Miller ends up with a negative one. So they're also going to be playing from behind, so that's good. Allen Robinson, we know, is going to get targeted the ball 10 to 12 teams. He was top 5 in overall targets last year in the NFL, and I don't see why that changed this year. They didn't really have anybody at all. The only thing is, maybe Anthony Miller gets more usage this year, but still, I don't hate the Allen Robinson play. I think he's a solid option. He's kind of pricey, but still not really too worried about him. $6,500, yeah, I'm cool with that. Then we got the Detroit Lions, where we got Danny Amendola in the slot, Galladay number 1, and Marvin Jones number 2. Kenny Galladay going to go against overrated as hell. Kyle Fuller, 58.7 PFF grade last year. Not good. All three of these guys grade out positively against these Chicago overrated corners. Now, safety, Eddie Jackson's elite, but Tayshaun Gibson, Eddie Jackson, and the safety, Matthew Stafford, still going to grade out positively against the entire secondary. When we go look at the offensive line versus defensive line, we see a negative matchup overall, but Kenny Golladay ends up being one of my best matchups on the entire slate, along with Marvin Jones. This is a game that they're supposed to be playing from behind, but I can see it being a little bit closer than people think. The thing is, it's going to be a slow-paced game, so that does scare me to, make full Detroit stacks, but I think having some of Kenny Golladay or Marvin Jones in lineups this week is going to be a very, very solid option in tournaments. I'm definitely going to want some exposure to both these guys because I just think their individual matchups very, very good. Danny Amendola is not going to get the ball enough for me to really want to get to him, but definitely Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones for sure. Next, we go to Green Bay, where we have Davante Adams and nobody, but Alan Lazard's there, but it's really nobody. It's just Davante Adams. The poor guy's got so much on his shoulders, and freaking Aaron Rodgers still has no one to pass the ball to. But Davante Adams 7,300 is probably honestly is going to be as cheap as you see him all year, and it's honestly in a perfect matchup. They lost their corners. Well, they weren't good. Xavier Rhodes was trash anyway, but Davante Adams gets to go up against Holton Hill or Cameron Dantzler. I don't really know which one's going to be the number one, but they're both not good. Well, Dantzler's a rookie. It's probably going to be Holton Hill. They're probably not putting a rookie on Davante Adams week one who isn't a super highly known guy, or a super highly drafted guy, highly touted guy. So Adams is going to get the ball a ton. How much is Lazard? 4,900. I think Lazard's actually interesting too, just because he is the number 2 receiver. Green Bay's supposed to be playing from behind in this game as well, so they're going to be throwing the ball a little bit more. So yeah, I think Davante Adams definitely someone that I just want to get some exposure to in tournaments, and I think it's a fine cash play if you can fit him in, because I think the match is great and he's going to get the ball an absolute ton. When we go look at Kirk Cousins versus the entire secondary, he does grade out positively. When we go look at the offensive line versus the defensive line, that grades out positively for Green Bay as well. So Davante Adams ends up being one of my higher matchups on the entire slate. So I definitely like going to him, and then Alan Lazard's is as well. I like the fact that they're supposed to be playing from behind. I think it's going to be a close game, and I just love Davante Adams' matchup. Up next, we have Minnesota going against Green Bay. Opposite way of that game. I don't like any of these guys at all. They're just, Justin Jefferson apparently wasn't great in training camp, so I don't really know what his role is going to be. But the only one we're really going to talk about here is Adam Thielen at 6,700, but he's got a match with Jair Alexander, who's a very good corner. He still is going to grade out positively, I believe. Yeah, but I don't know, man. Alexander's he's just like this young corner who last year was supposed to be his breakout year, and it was for a while, and then he just fell off, but it wasn't against Minnesota or anything. So, actually, no, wait, that's not true. Stephon Diggs destroyed him one week. But overall, Kirk Cousins against this secondary grades out positively. When we go look at offense line versus defense line, it's going to end up being a negative matchup for Minnesota by a lot. Their offense line is really not good at all, so that does worry me. I don't like the cornerback matchup. I don't like the offensive line matchup. Overall, Kirk Cousins versus that secondary is fine, but I just don't think this is really where Adam Thielen has himself a great game. He is going to get the ball a lot, probably going to get targeted at least 10 times this game. They're supposed to be playing from ahead a little bit, and I think they're more of a running offense anyway, so I don't really know how great I feel about going to Adam Thielen. All right, up next we have the 2 receivers that everyone's playing week 1. Julio and Calvin Ridley. People are going to stack these guys like crazy with Matt Ryan, and for good reason, but I still don't think this is as good of a matchup as everyone says. Quentin Dunbar, Shaq Griffin are your 1 and 2 corners who are going to be guarding Julio and Ridley. We'll see which is on which. I'm going to assume Dunbar is probably on Julio and Shaq Griffin's on Calvin Ridley for the most part. But overall, these guys still do grade out really well. Of course, Julio, of course, going to grade out great. But that's not the one I was really worried about. It's Calvin Ridley. He grades out well, but not fantastic. And then we go look at Matt Ryan versus the entire secondary, where he actually has a negative matchup because Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs are the other 2 safeties. So the secondary overall is very, very good in Seattle this year. I think it's one of the most underrated secondaries coming into the league, and could be a top 4 or 5 one in the league this year. So that does worry me a little bit, but it's still supposed to be a super high-scoring game, high-paced game. I think that this team is. I think that these guys are just good plays. You just can't. It's Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley against Seattle in a fast-paced game. They're not favored. So I do like going there, especially Julio. Julio is probably one of my favorite pay-up players on the entire slate. Calvin Ridley, not as much. I think Calvin Ridley's going to be so highly owned. I just might go elsewhere. Target Seattle with Gurley, Jones, and Hurst instead of Ridley, because I think Ridley might end up being one of the highest owned players. Up next, we'll go to the other side of that Vegas Panthers game I was talking about that I absolutely loved. Robbie Anderson at $4,700, DJ Moore $6,600, Curtis Samuel $4,600. So these are the corners for the Oakland Raiders. Their secondary is garbage too. Trayvon Mullen, rookie that should have been a second or third round pick, but was a first round pick. Damon Arnett and LaMarcus Joyner. They all suck. They're not good. Well, I mean, okay, Arnett might be good. I don't know who's guarding DJ Moore, but if they're putting the rookie on DJ Moore, give me that all day. Even Trayvon Mullen, give me that all day long. I absolutely love this. DJ Moore grades out so positively. One of the best individual matchups against corners on the slate. And then we go look at the rest of the secondary. Teddy Bridgewater grades out very positively. We got the offensive line versus the defensive line. It's a slightly negative matchup, but not that much where I'm really worried about it. This is a game where it's going to be a shootout. I mean, this is supposed to be one of the highest scoring games on the slate. Two awful defenses. They're just going to be throwing it back and forth, back and forth. So DJ Moore, I mean, I just love DJ Moore this week. I want to play as much DJ Moore as I can. Robbie Anderson is a deep threat. I like throwing him some stabs in tournaments, and Curtis Samuel too. Just want to get some stabs in tournaments. DJ Moore, great cash play for me. He's just going to get peppered with targets. So DJ Moore's skill set is very similar to Michael Thomas's, and we saw Michael Thomas just eat when Teddy Bridgewater was playing in New Orleans last year. So you know DJ Moore is just going to get the ball an absolute ton. So yeah, I do want to get some DJ Moore this week. I think he looks really, really good. Up next, we're going to go to the New Orleans Saints, where we got Emmanuel Sanders and Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas is $9,000. I don't really want to pay that much for him. I mean, Jamel Dean, Carlton Davis are the starting two corners for these guys, who are actually better than people think they are. I mean, Jamel Dean and Carlton Davis, I think, are one of the up-and-coming cornerback duos in the league that's going to be really good. I think they're going to take a leap this year, but it is still Michael Thomas. Like, he's still going to handle them pretty well. I don't think there's going to be a problem there. Michael Thomas has a grade of, or has a very, very positive matchup, and then Drew Brees against the entire secondary also has a very positive matchup. When we go look at offensive line versus defensive line for the pass rushing, not the run defense, it's a positive matchup for New Orleans. So Michael Thomas is very, very good matchup, and so is Emmanuel Sanders. I think a lot of people, I'm probably going to stay away from Thomas just because I think he's too expensive. Because I just don't think he's going to get the target share he had last year. Now you have a healthy Kamara back. You have Emmanuel Sanders on the team. Jared Cook's still there. I just don't think Michael Thomas is getting that amount of targets. He was getting like 15, 16 targets a game last year. I think that regresses to more like 10, where he should be more of a mid 7K, maybe 8K receiver. So I don't think that Michael Thomas should be that expensive. So I'll probably stay away from it. But Emmanuel Sanders will definitely get some shares. And then on the other side of that game, this is going to be such a highly stacked game. It's a super high total. Probably going to be a shootout game. We have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. Now, Mike Evans has been handled by Marshawn Lattimore a lot during his career. This has been a guy who's locked him up pretty much every single time. I don't think he's ever scored a touchdown on Marshawn Lattimore or something like that. So, and they play twice a year, and it's been for a few years now. So Mike Evans has struggled against Marshawn Lattimore, but Chris Godwin, oh my goodness, this is my favorite receiver play on the entire slate. I love Chris Godwin this week. I don't care who he gets. If he gets Jenkins or P.J. Williams in the slot, if he lines up in the slot, even better, because P.J. Williams, he torched twice last year, just torched. And I just see that happening again. Chris Godwin just lit him up last year. P.J. Williams is a terrible slot corner, but Janoris Jenkins isn't really that good of a cornerback either. So Chris Godwin is just going to light them up. I think this is the play here. In a shootout game, Chris Godwin, I'm going to have a lot of exposure to him in GPPs. I already know. We got Brady in a positive matchup against the entire secondary. We go offensive line to defensive line. We have a positive matchup for Tampa here as well. Chris Godwin grades out as Chris Godwin and Mike Evans both grade out as really good matchups, but I definitely want to go to Godwin's more than Evans. I think Godwin, his skill set also fits Tom Brady more than it does Mike Evans, so I like them a lot. We'll go to the Arizona Cardinals facing off against San Francisco. Probably not going to go here. They are going to be playing from behind more than likely against San Francisco, but the secondary and overall defense in San Francisco should just be able to shut them down. I mean, you got Richard Sherman, Emmanuel Mosley, and K'Wan Williams, one of the best slot corners in the league. The one I do think, I don't think DeAndre Hopkins is going to be able to pay off that price tag. Oh, wait, never mind. I'm sorry. He's only $1,600. That's fine. He's not going to have as many targets this year because he's in Arizona. There's other guys to get the ball to, Larry Fitzgerald, obviously, and Christian Kirk, obviously, but I think Dan Arnold's going to come out of nowhere a little bit this year, and then Andy Isabella is also on that team. Hopkins does have a positive matchup versus the corners, but Kyler Murray versus this entire secondary is just terrible. When we go look at the offensive line versus defensive line, it is a slightly positive matchup, but not a lot. Ends up giving all three of these guys negative matchups. I don't really want to get to them. They are going to be playing from behind. I think the one that I might want to go to, even though I know it has the worst matchup there, is probably Christian Kirk, just because individually with the corner, he has the best matchup against Emmanuel Mosley, so I think that one's okay to go to. Up next, we'll go to the San Francisco 49ers, and Deebo Samuel's questionable right now. I don't think he'll play, but if he does at 5,300, I really like him. But we'll talk about Brandon Ayuk, who's going to get most of the targets without Samuel on the field. The problem is he's going to get guarded by Patrick Peterson. And Patrick Peterson, yeah, he had a rough year last year, but he's still going to be a Hall of Fame cornerback. He was elite when he was in the league. Jimmy Garoppolo up against that secondary has a positive matchup. You see the offensive line versus defensive line. It's going to be positive. So Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel, both grayed out as positive matchups for me. I think Ayuk at 4,500, if he's the only receiver there, is a very good play to go to. The only problem that worries me about them is that San Francisco does like to just run the ball a lot. So they might just get into a running offense and none of the receivers really do anything. And then we'll close with the Seattle Seahawks. In that shootout game with Atlanta, everyone loves stacking these guys, and DK Metcalf's just ridiculously too cheap. But because of that, DK Metcalf is going to get a ton of ownership. He's going to be one of the highest owned receivers on the slate. So why not go to Tyler Lockett? I mean, they're both getting guarded by terrible corners, Isaiah Oliver and then rookie A.J. Terrell, you're telling me rookie A.J. Terrell is going to go out there and handle DK Metcalf? Okay. It's just not going to happen. And then I even maybe going to a little bit of Philip Dorsett. I think going to maybe just a tiny bit of Philip Dorsett and probably only putting him in stacks of Russell Wilson along with one of Lockett or Metcalf is just solid because he has deep threat ability, and we know Russell Wilson's an elite deep threat thrower. Offensive line versus defensive line grades out slightly negatively, but not enough for it worries me. Tyler Lockett has one of the highest matchup grades on the slate. DK Metcalf is up there too, and then so is Dorsett. And they're going to be in a shootout game, so I do like going to those guys. But yeah, I think that's really all I got to say on this slate for the wide receivers. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys really, really enjoyed this. I'm ready to watch some football this weekend. I know you guys are too. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great day.